Your entire existence here on earth comes down to one key question, and the way you answer that question makes all the difference for you. If I've met you before, my name is Nate Carter, and this is the Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. And today we're walking through Mark chapter 8. The most important question that anyone will ever ask you is the question that Jesus poses in Mark chapter 8, beginning in verse 29. Jesus asks, "Who do you say I am?" He's talking to his disciples. This is the most important question that any human being has to answer. How do you respond to Jesus? Who do you say I am? Who am I to you? And Peter's response is the one that makes all the difference. The way that you answer the question will determine not only your eternity, but also how you'll spend the rest of your life here on earth. And Peter's response is exactly the way that we need to respond when we come into contact with Jesus. Peter says in verse 29, "You are the Messiah." Four simple words that changed the trajectory of Peter's life for the rest of his life, not to mention changing the trajectory of his eternity. The gates of heaven are suddenly open for Peter, and he will spend his eternity with this Messiah that he has just claimed, that Jesus is the Messiah. But it also changes the direction of Peter's life as he lives out his life on earth, that he's going to be living now for the kingdom for the rest of his days and ultimately martyred for his faith. And perhaps that's the direction that our life will go as well. But in the meantime, Peter is winning over converts and bringing that same question to the people that he's interacting with as well. Who do you say Jesus is? And they have the opportunity to respond. Now, I want to point out two other interesting things that happen in this text. First of all, that's not the first question that Jesus asks. He doesn't first ask, "Who do you say I am?" But first he asks, "Who do people say I am?" in verse 27. Now, in the context here, Jesus is constantly interacting with both the Pharisees and just the regular townsfolk. And the townsfolk are seeing Jesus as kind of this magician among them, and this healer that can come and heal their sicknesses and their demon possession. And so a lot of them are just seeing Jesus as almost this magician. And then the Pharisees are seeing Jesus as, first of all, a fraud, and then secondly, as a threat to the traditions that they have set up and are trying to hold desperately to. And so as Jesus is asking his disciples who people say they are, it's an important question for us to entertain as well. Who does our culture say that Jesus is? And probably if your knee-jerk reaction to that is probably what many people would say. Jesus was a good teacher. Well, a good teacher is not the Messiah. A good teacher isn't going to do anything for the eternal destiny of your soul. Some of us in our culture may say Jesus is a fraud, or Jesus isn't. Jesus never existed. And the way that our culture answers that question is very critical in terms of how we interact with our culture as well. We have the opportunity to come before those that we interact with and say, "Here's who Jesus is to me. Jesus is the Messiah. He saved me from my sins. I know that I'm a sinner, and Jesus saved me from those sins. And I can stand with Jesus and live forever with him, and so can you." The other thing I want to point out is just that right after this, Peter goes and completely screws up. He goes and basically pulls Jesus aside for Jesus is talking about how he needs to suffer and die, and then 3 days later he will rise again. And Peter pulls Jesus aside and basically says, "You can't be talking like that," and he kind of berates Jesus for that. And Jesus' response to Peter is some words I never want to hear. He says, "Get behind me, Satan, because you're seeing things from a human's view and not God's view." And so I find this encouraging because the very one who has claimed those four precious words, "You are the Messiah," is the same one who just in the very next section goes on and messes up in a major way. And we know that Peter then will go on to deny Jesus. And we know that Peter will go on to build Jesus' church. And so the ups and downs of following Jesus are evident in Peter's life. And so as we find ourselves in similar situations, we don't need to be discouraged that God can no longer use us, because as we know, God used Peter in amazing ways for building his church and furthering the gospel. So I ask you today, who is Jesus? Who do you say he is? Your response to that matters. It makes all the difference in the world. Take some time if you need to ponder the answer to that question, and then pray for those who you know need to answer that question in a different way than perhaps you have. And then we'll see you next time here on the Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. God bless.